Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being at this presentation today. My name is Stephen McCaskill. I am the CEO of DASSET and will be your host. And today's discussion will be on Dogecoin. Dogecoin is a crypto that has gained a lot of traction and a lot of attention. Normally, I do presentations that involve hands-on demos and how to use things or how to utilize different blockchain tools. But today we'll not have a demo. It will be mostly talking about inner workings of Dogecoin and the theoreticals of money. So this talk will definitely have some abstract concepts. DASSET is New Zealand's trading platform for over 80 different digital assets, including Dogecoin. So you can't really talk about the evolution that is happening in money without talking about F.A. Hayek. Hayek won a Nobel Prize in the 1970s, and immediately after he wrote, he won his Nobel Prize, he wrote a book called The Denationalization of Money. And it's really interesting to see Facebook's cryptocurrency project. It's really a living template of the book that he wrote. And what he wrote about, what he discovered are these things called Hayekian Systems or spontaneous orders. And what he realized was when you look at biology, you have spontaneous order in evolution. Lots of things are changing and it's emergent, and it's really unpredictable. And the same concepts can be applied to other systems, especially in the social sciences. And this is where he starts looking at money and what the essence of money is from a philosophical perspective. And so this is where he realized that monetary systems are spontaneous orders. And when you allow them to flourish, all kinds of possibilities can materialize, and many of them have yet to be discovered. And so looking at Dogecoin, it's had a very wild ride since its formation in late 2013. And when you, when you look at Dogecoin's price, which I don't usually talk about during these talks, but I think it's something that people can relate to when it comes to crypto, because Dogecoin epitomizes the most volatility it has over the 9 years that it's been around. It has been probably one of the most volatile cryptocurrencies with enormous swings both up and down in the price. And it's almost like clockwork. People think that the token is dead. Its history has really created a lack of confidence in the token in some ways, but then in other ways has emerged as the best performing crypto asset that's ever existed. And it makes people have a double take. In some ways, it's been a very negative asset for the crypto community, but in some ways it's been very positive. So it's had these wild swings of volatility, both in public sentiment, which can also be reflected in the price. And so when people think that crypto is extremely volatile, we can look at Dogecoin as the perfect example of that. And it can move by hundreds of percent in price in a day, which isn't something that you will see in something like Bitcoin or Ethereum or these other assets. And so we're going to look at different aspects of Dogecoin, particularly the technology, the things like supply of Doge, and the community and the ecosystem. So Dogecoin materialized by a developer at IBM and a developer at Adobe in early December 2013. And what they did was they forked a cryptocurrency that existed at the time, Litecoin. And this was before Ethereum. This was when there were very few cryptocurrencies in existence. And they decided, why don't we basically take the same technology infrastructure as Litecoin and create this meme coin, or this coin that's kind of a joke. So it was 100% meant to be a joke from day one. And if you look at Litecoin, so it has a slightly different algorithm for mining than Bitcoin. It uses something called a script algorithm. So things like GPUs made it really easy to mine Dogecoin. It's a proof of work. Back then, there wasn't a proof of stake token that was in existence. And I think they did a pretty good job with the technology that they chose when setting up Dogecoin. Now, that doesn't mean that they intentionally did this. It's very much by mistake. So they initially, they enabled the ability to have a randomized reward. So you didn't know how much you were going to get. Each time you mined a block of Dogecoin, it would be a random amount of new Doge that you would receive. And in late 2014, the developers did something that was probably one of the best decisions that was made for the technology behind Dogecoin. And this is why I think part of the reason why it's so relevant today. And what they implemented was something called merge mining. So what they essentially enabled is that anyone who is mining Litecoin could also mine Dogecoin. And so what this enabled was essentially using the same amount of hardware, the same amount of infrastructure to not only mine Litecoin, but you could also mine this other currency at the same time, Dogecoin. And so this created an improvement, or it, solidified Dogecoin's security mechanism. So during bear markets, we've seen a few proof of work chains be compromised through 51% attacks, like Ethereum Classic, some of the offshoots of Bitcoin. But we haven't really seen that with Dogecoin. And the big reason why is its security infrastructure is very solid. So it's basically the same security infrastructure that's securing Litecoin is also securing Dogecoin. So from that perspective, that's enabled the token to remain relevant, because anyone who is mining this other crypto will also receive newly minted Dogecoin. And of course, that increased the hash rate difficulty set, essentially increased the amount of computers that were securing the Dogecoin network. And I think if they had not done that, Dogecoin probably would have lost its popularity and wouldn't really be something we talk about today. Because during that time, there were actually hundreds and hundreds of other cryptocurrencies, and all of them have lost their popularity. Nobody talks about them today. Nobody uses them. Probably most people in crypto have no inkling what these other tokens that came out in 2013, 2014 are all about. And so Dogecoin is one of the few that kind of survived that. So when we look at tokenomics, this is where I think a lot of people get stuck on and have trouble wrapping their head around it. And so it really comes down to the supply of Dogecoin. So they started with an initial capped supply of 100 billion tokens. And in 2015, all 100 billion tokens had been mined. And what the the people on the project decided to do was added the ability to mine 5 billion tokens a year for every year forever. So that means about every 20 years, the supply of Dogecoin doubles. So what does that mean? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I'll talk about it in a little bit. But the interesting thing is that although the supply, there's no cap supply, there's a certain amount that's being issued every single year for the rest of time until the majority of token holders decide to change its consensus system. The inflation rate is actually decreasing as a percentage. And the reason why is that there's 5 billion new tokens every year. It's 5 billion divided by the entire supply. So if there's 100 billion tokens in 2015, then the inflation rate for that year is 5%. Now, in 20 years, when there's 200 billion tokens, then the inflation rate is 2.5%. And so, as you can see over time, as the overall supply increases, the inflation rate declines. So you compare that to national currency. National currency will have somewhere in the range of 2 to 4% inflation each year. So, if you look at Dogecoin in 2040 or 2050, the inflation rate for Dogecoin may actually be lower than a legacy currency such as US dollars or New Zealand dollars. And so and this is very similar to something like gold. So if you look at the supply of gold, the supply of gold is all the gold mined since the beginning of time when we first started mining gold. And every year we're mining, I don't know, maybe 1 to 3% of the total supply of gold, and adding that to the previous supply. So supply of gold is increasing 1 to 3% each year, and so Dogecoin will eventually get to that similar inflation rate in about 30 to 40 years. So the interesting thing about that is, we don't really know what the answer is. We've seen that national currencies have innovated in the ability to have things like paper money, and they've survived even though they are the first ones to have an inflationary currency. The last 50 years, these national currencies have, some of them have managed to survive with their 2 to 3% inflation rate. And a big reason why is there's so many other influences and factors. The population is growing, there are more products in the market, there are more services on the market. And so if you have a fixed growing supply of something like gold or something like Dogecoin, you could still potentially have deflation when there's enough capital growth, there's enough growth in goods, there's enough growth in population that it's that's higher than the 2% that Dogecoin is doing. You compare this to something like the New Zealand dollar, and the New Zealand dollar is not very transparent in terms of how much money is going to be printed, because it really is influenced by political whim. It's influenced by the decisions of the powers that be at that given time. So based on the economic environment today, the Reserve Bank may change the amount of new money in circulation. So it's not consistent in that the policies may change, in which case we have to readjust our economic modeling to understand what the amount of new money is being printed in the economy here in New Zealand. And so that means there's a little bit more uncertainty when we look at national currencies, because the rate at which money is being issued into the economy could be different tomorrow from what it is today, based on the overview of the economy and what the central banks see as the value that they want to create within New Zealand. You know, they obviously have a few things that they focus on, such as low unemployment, stability in prices, and growing an economy, helping an economy flourish, essentially. So, you know, a lot of central banks have those goals in mind, and they'll take a lot of data based on the current economic environment, like cost of housing, and inflation, and employment, and they'll adjust how much money they think should be in the market, and then they'll let people know. In some way, in some places, that's more transparent than others, but it can change very quickly. You know, right now, the central banks are very concerned about inflation, so they're increasing interest rates. That really means that they're trying to curtail or restrict the amount of new money that's being pushed into the economy. And you know, they'll have different ideas about this throughout the year as to how they're doing in regards to the greater economic environment. And so they may change their policies and how much money they're printing. And so that's the difference between you know, legacy or national currencies and certain currencies like Bitcoin and Dogecoin, where the inflation rate is embedded in the code, and everyone knows exactly what it is, and we'll see what it is for the next 100 years. And so when we look at the history behind Dogecoin, it's not the best history in the world. There's a lot of scams that have been associated with Dogecoin in the past. There's a lot of things that have happened that I don't think are very positive for the crypto community as a whole. And when you first, and the other website, and you look at it today versus 6-7 years ago, it's a very different story. 6-7 years ago, they were playing on Dogecoin as a meme. It's a joke. It's something fun. It's something that involves community and charity, and it's you know, very much embracing that this is magic internet money. Whereas today, it's a little bit more serious. They're trying to focus on, you know, Dogecoin having specific utility as a payment system, and so the tune is quite changed. Not entirely sure if I like that, but it's something that they're starting to go with. Very early on, the developers sold all their Dogecoin, and the primary guys behind the project really stopped supporting the project. And if you ever go see a news article or video, they'll really rail or disregard the token. You know, they're pretty upset that the token's gotten the popularity and the value it is today. But on the flip side, you know, there is a lot of positivity. There's been a lot of funding used from Dogecoin to fund charities and positive causes. So the very first one, I don't know if anyone here remembers, was the Jamaican bobsled team in 2014. That was followed by investment to sponsor a NASCAR driver, and that brought a lot of popularity to cryptocurrency, a lot more interest into crypto. And then we started to see a lot of interest in the last few years from big players such as Mark Cuban and Elon Musk. So you can buy a plane ticket or spaceship, a ticket to space with Dogecoin. You can buy merchandise and gear to basketball games or other sports games, which Mark Cuban, who owns an NBA team, started accepting in his business last year. So there's a robust history of Dogecoin over the last 8 years that it's essentially existed, and interestingly, it's made Dogecoin one of the most decentralized cryptocurrencies on the market. But at the same time, so there's kind of a joke where Dogecoin, or Elon Musk was talking about integrating Dogecoin into Tesla to accept his payment. And he said, "Oh, I'll reach out to the Dogecoin developers." And I'm not entirely sure. It seems like he was being, and it was primarily because he was being chastised by the crypto community for his interest in Dogecoin from a serious perspective. And I don't know if Elon Musk was making a joke out of it or if he understood what he's talking about. I think at the time, he actually wasn't really aware that there were no developers for the Dogecoin crypto. There are some devs who have contributed, but there are no dedicated developers per se. And so it's something that people from around the crypto community space will provide support because they recognize Dogecoin as something that has similar technology to other platforms that needs to be upgraded. For example, to if there's any fundamental changes to Litecoin's infrastructure, then there may be changes to Dogecoin's infrastructure to maintain the merge mining, that kind of stuff, to essentially stay up to date with the technologies. But it's a very much more decentralized project from other platforms such as Ethereum. It aligns a lot more with Bitcoin ethos and the Litecoin ethos. And so when we look at Dogecoin's history, its history has ranged, or its use cases have ranged. It was very popular as a means of tipping. When Doge had very low value, people would tip thousands to each other on Twitter, on Reddit. There are all kinds of applications to allow the instant tipping of Doge. And this really comes from, or enables, the microtransaction element of Doge. I know around 2015, 2016, working with exchanges around the world, the people who got the most benefit out of Dogecoin were people in developing nations. Partly because transaction fees for things like Bitcoin started increasing around 2015, 2016, 2017. And so Dogecoin was very cheap. At the time, Dogecoin was less than a cent, and it was very cheap to hold and transfer. And so there were people who were able to trade or move 30 cents worth of Doge. They still do today. And that might mean a lot to them. That's a lot of value for those people. And so being able to do it, try sending 30 cents by PayPal, and you're going to be spending 60 cents at the least, because you have a 30-cent transaction fee. And so sending money digitally, especially in economies where cents mean a lot, became a very big use case for Doge. And so Doge is almost like that dark horse where a lot of people have been utilizing its fundamentals instead of Bitcoin, instead of Ethereum, and because of its cost effectiveness, because they're able to. And so then we have huge charities and fundraising events that have rallied around Dogecoin. And also early on, a lot of uses around gambling. So in the US, gambling is illegal. So people would use Dogecoin to play poker online, to play blackjack, or whatever they wanted to do online. And so so there've always been plenty of use cases, but early in the day, there were also a lot of hacks and scams that involved Dogecoin. So I've talked about this already. But I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of why people have really rallied behind Dogecoin. And despite the founders no longer being associated, despite being a joke token, despite essentially being the token that has that volatility, it's stronger and more resilient today than it's ever been. Elon Musk is having battles on the internet with McDonald's, saying that he'll eat a Big Mac on TV if McDonald's accepts Dogecoin as currency. I don't think it's too crazy to think that big companies look at Dogecoin as a form of payment, or a token that can be used as currency. And so this is where I want to go into this concept of spontaneous or emergent orders, because we're at a very unique time in monetary innovation. We've had Bitcoin for 10 years now, over 10 years, and we've had cryptocurrencies for some time. Some people understand where the space is going, and they understand that there are tools, there are ideas, there are products that we have yet to create and provide value. And we're getting closer and closer to creating these new ideas, building on what's built on the day before, the week before, year before. And so the innovations in the crypto space come in waves. And last year we saw an enormous amount of growth in innovation. I think that slowed down a little bit now while people are just trying to catch up to the ideas, but we're going to have that new wave of innovation towards the end of this year, early next year. And these are very similar to evolution, where it's essentially these innovations or mutations. There are mutations in the code, quite literally, and some of them work, some of them fail, some of them are at the wrong time, some of them don't have the public support. So they're throwing these innovations into the real world, and some of them might just be too early. And so when we start looking at how these spontaneous orders work, and what examples of spontaneous orders are out there, then we see that what's happening in the crypto space is very much a spontaneous order, this emergent, evolving, constantly evolving state, sometimes called creative destruction. And so great examples of spontaneous orders that I think are a bit more tangible are things like the English language, or just language in general. Every year, new words get entered into English language, new words get thrown out, and it's done by mistake a lot of the times, by people just discovering these words and applying them to a concept, and other people liking it and approving it and accepting it and using it. and then it becomes something that's part of our lexicon. And so the emergence, or so money itself is a spontaneous order. And when we look at potential forms of money, Bitcoin isn't money, but it has that potential to be money. And when you start comparing Bitcoin to competitors, there are some that are contenders and there are some that are not. And for example, an application token. So Aave is a lending platform, or a token for a lending application. It's written, it's using a smart contract. It's using another cryptocurrency's infrastructure. It's using Ethereum for its security. And the smart contract rules are set by a group of people, and a closed group of people, and they have a lot more control over changing the protocol of the Aave application. So it's not really a token used for currency. It's a token that's driving this application to enable people for lending. So when we start looking at digital tokens that can compete on Bitcoin's level as a potential form of digital currency, there are very few out there. That's when you start looking at the likes of Litecoin. That's when you start looking at privacy coins like Monero, like Zcash. And then you come to platform tokens like Ethereum. So I don't know, and I don't think that things like Bitcoin and Ethereum are in the same basket. I do think that Bitcoin and Ethereum are apples and oranges, where there's a lot of baggage in Ethereum. There's a lot more in the protocol. There's a lot more elements that enable Ethereum to be used as a platform for applications to run on. So it's very complicated, and the protocol is very bloated. It's very different from something like Bitcoin, which is single function. It has one purpose. It's a very simple and dumb infrastructure. And so it really only has one purpose. And that purpose is more as a storage of value, medium of exchange, and payment system. And so when you narrow down the digital tokens to see what else is like Bitcoin out there, there's actually very few options. And so this is where I see Dogecoin as being one of the only, if not the only, competitor to, and its potential as a form of digital currency. Some of the benefits that Dogecoin has is the larger supply. It's a lot easier for somebody to wrap their head around 1 cent or 20 cents or even $1 for a token versus $80,000 for a token. And so when we look at public perception, that ability to create engagement visually, that's something that Dogecoin has done that no other cryptocurrency can do. And that's really that meme side of things. Memes are viral. That's where Dogecoin has really come from nowhere and essentially slapped everyone in the face. Is this thing that can be a viable form of money because it's non-threatening. And so when people look at it, especially people under the age of 30, we see that most people, they go to public school and nobody gets taught money. They don't understand money. They don't understand things like interest, compound interest. And so there's a fundamental lack of understanding of money. So it's a bit scary. It's difficult to grasp. It's a difficult concept to wrap your head around if you never learned anything about it. And so Dogecoin kind of fits that non-threatening internet meme culture that people can rally behind and start learning and understanding money. Start understanding, well, why does this thing have value in the first place? Part of it is its utility. It's very similar. Its value is very similar in the value of something like the dollar. It has value because we believe it has value. And it has value because it has utility, very much like the dollar. You can go buy a cup of coffee. With Dogecoin, you can go gambling. You can send 30 cents to somebody in El Salvador, which you can't really do with the dollar. So it has certain uses that that fit the digital age that legacy money cannot. And so so this is why I think it's definitely something that shouldn't be laughed off at. It's something that should be taken seriously, because this spontaneous order is something that will always surprise and shock us, and can have fundamental value that people see and enable them to experiment and try new things. And so when we look at Dogecoin, what is the joke? What are people laughing at? Is it these much wow memes? And I think part of the joke could be that Dogecoin could outlive the dollar. It has the ability to be around for 50, 100 years or more. So to me, that's pretty funny. This joke coin could potentially have more value and outlive something like a national currency. That could also be the meme that has that potential to be the global form of money. We don't know. When we start looking at things like inflation and the supply, these things we just don't have answers for in terms of what should be the case. What should the inflation rate be for a currency? Well, right now, it's being dictated by people, and it's not. And this enables it to be dictated by code, but we just don't have the answer. People lose coins. People use coins. They burn coins. So every year, a certain percentage get lost forever. Although this is the inflation rate of newly minted coins, you have so many other aspects and variables that need to be factored in, like how many coins are being lost forever, the growth in services and products, like I said before, and population growth, and all these other things, means that 2% inflation rate could work. Maybe it doesn't, maybe it does. So maybe Dogecoin isn't the answer, but it's helping us solve these answers so that we can get better forms of money on the internet and in the future. So, I am a big fan of economics, and it's really looking at things that we think that we have an idea and a grasp of. We attempt to centrally plan. We try to manage things top down. And that's the beautiful thing about these spontaneous orders and what we're designing, is that we're playing with things that we don't actually have control of, that we don't know where it's going to go. And so we have to just understand that this is an experiment that is moving us in a direction for hopefully greater human flourishing. So I'm going to stop there and open up for questions. What questions do you have for Dogecoin? No questions yet. Okay. What do I think about other meme coins? Okay, great question. And so, there is, so if you look at popular cryptocurrencies, you'll see there's kind of a long tail. So you have Bitcoin. It has 700 or 800 billion USD in market cap. And then you have Ethereum, which is 400 billion. And the next one might be 200 billion. And so you have this long tail in terms of value and number of coins. And so most of the value is captured in Bitcoin, and the second most value captured is in the second one. And so when we look at meme coins like Sheeb and Elon Doge and the thousands of others that are out there now, we kind of see this long tail. And so somebody came along, they looked at Dogecoin, they looked at how popular it was, and they realized that there should really be if there's a Dogecoin, then there should be one riding on its tailwind. And so let's make it this token Sheeb. And so that's exactly what they're doing. They're running on Doge's tail and capitalizing on the value that Doge is creating. And so you'll see kind of this long tail of cryptocurrency with smaller and smaller and smaller value within the meme coin space. Now, in terms of their value, in terms of their merit, I think it's all over the place. Some of them are just, get rich quick schemes, essentially, where they'll launch a token really not being innovative or doing anything exciting, hopefully capitalize on it and walk away from the token. And then you have others like Sheeb. I don't know if that was a misspelling, Sheeb GF. I don't know Sheeb GF, but I know Sheeb. And they're trying to do things. They're trying to create utility. They're trying to do decentralized exchange. They're trying to do things like smart contracts and DeFi and that kind of stuff. And so they're almost like the Ethereum to Doge, or the Ethereum to Bitcoin in the meme coin space. So I don't know much about Sheeb GF, Sheeb's girlfriend. So I need to look into it. But this is the spontaneous order, the viral, the viral nature of the internet, the viral nature of memes, where it's completely unpredictable. Maybe there will be a token that is a meme coin that wipes Dogecoin out of the water and becomes the next currency. I don't think that's the case. I haven't really seen anything enormously innovative beyond the meme love, I guess you can see it in the crypto space. What other questions do we have? So it doesn't have to be a question about Doge crypto. It can be a question about another crypto. Could be a question about DASSET. Happy to answer any questions. If not, then I will wrap it up. Okay, random question. What do you think is the best staking platform? So it really depends what you mean by staking. If you're referring to staking of a infrastructure like Cardano, then you can use all kinds of different services to do that for you. If you're looking at staking like lending, then there's a mix of centralized services and decentralized services. The centralized services are a bit tricky because some of them are about to be targeted, especially in the US, by regulators. We've seen that from the SEC in the last 2-3 weeks. And so although I don't think anything would happen to your money, they are being targeted by those platforms. If you're looking at the staking and DeFi, then it really depends on your risk. So if you're looking for low risk, things like Aave and Compound, you can buy insurance against it. They have billions of dollars, and MakerDAO, I should say. And so I think those are better forms of platforms, but at the same time you get lower yield. If you are interested in a very specific project, you think that project's going to do very well in terms of you have that that conviction that this is a project that is going to be around for a long time, then there's a lot of opportunity for greater yield, providing capital or liquidity to that project. So, for example, early on with PancakeSwap, if you were a big fan of the decentralized exchange PancakeSwap on Binance Smart Chain, then you'd have to buy PancakeSwap and provide liquidity against USD or against BNB and receive newly minted PancakeSwap. And so the yield was 100% or more. So your return was quite high, but the return was in PancakeSwap tokens. So you'd have to believe in those tokens, or you'd have to actively sell them to USD. And so it's really a tricky one, because I do think some of the yields can be quite high, but you have to have the conviction that this is a product that you want, and you don't mind taking payment in that product. So it's really a tricky one, especially when you factor in things like impermanent loss. So I can't really make a recommendation that might be considered financial advice, but I can say there's a lot of opportunities for staking out there, and they range. It really comes down to your risk profile. If you want to stake national currency, then you might go to the lending, and your yields might be 8 to 12%. If you want to yield stake their native token, then you can get yields of 50, 100 or more, but then you have other risks, like whether the project's even going to be around for a long time. If that project is just launched last week, then there's much higher risk of it being a scam, of the developers running off with all your money. And so yeah, it really depends on what you want to do. And maybe you said that you're doing it for passive income, so you might want to spread your risk, like look at protocols that have low yield, and you're putting more of your capital in those ones. It's really up to your own risk profile. Okay, last questions. No, all right. Well, thank you everyone for attending our crypto journey. We will be on again in 2 weeks, and I look forward to seeing you there.